call the room to order and we will start. So welcome everybody, and thank you to the staff for the pre-budget submission presentation just prior. I just want to acknowledge that we are on Noongar Boodja, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and reaffirm both mine and Shelter's commitment to the Uluru Statement of the Heart. And I think Laura talked about the Santa Teresa judgment, which is, you know, I mean, you don't want to say the word game changer, do you really, in this context? But it is quite a game changer, in particular in the communities in which I work. It's been a hot topic of conversation for many years now. I just also acknowledge Dan Kelly and his legal team on that process. So a little bit of housekeeping. This AGM will be in person with us here today and via Zoom. If you could keep your mobile phones on silent. If you want to do some looking at your emails, just try and keep it discreet. And don't let it ring out if that's possible, thanks. There's toilets outside. If there's an emergency, shelter staff will guide us to safety. And the event will be photographed by Royston. There will be literally thousands of photographs. And if you prefer not to have your image taken, please let Royston know. So the agenda had shuffled slightly at the last minute in terms of item 2 because we had Emma Colombera, who's coming to give us as a guest speaker, rescheduling. She's rescheduled again and she's here, but we're going to keep to the agenda, Emma, if that's okay. I know you're here, just stay put and I'll get you up in a little bit. So that's it for the kind of brief start, let's say. I'd like to declare the 2023 AGM open. You should all have, and I hope you did, if you, when you came in, there's both an agenda, minutes, and the audited financial statements at the front registration desk. So if you haven't got that, go and grab one if you need. For those online, the documents are also available in the invitation that you would have received. So I'd like to start by thanking the current members of the board over the past year, the 2022 to 23 board, for their incredible work and commitment. They are an exceptional bunch of people, and I am always delighted to listen to the commentary and insights that they bring to the conversations that we have. So I'd just like to name check a few, if you don't mind. I'd like to thank Michael Pugh, our Vice Chair, who's just arrived in the nick of time. Thank you, Michael. Alf Lay, who was 5 minutes early, bloody perfect, as our Treasurer. Natalie Sangali, our Secretary. I'd also like to thank Gordon Cole, who resigned from the board earlier this year, but I'll mention him a little bit later. Mark Slattery, who's here. Simon Robbins, who has unfortunately had to travel back to the UK due to a family bereavement. Michael Chester, John Lysart, and Catherine Morey, who's here. Where is she? Oh, there. I thought you were sitting over there. There are a number of items, as per any AGM, that will require a vote. You are also able to raise items in general business if you are a shelter member. If you are a shelter member, you should have been provided a card for this purpose. If you're online, you can use the raise hand function and we can count your vote. Royston can see and is recording that as well. So, if we move to attendance and apologies, we've got a list that's been checked off and at the registration desk in terms of attendances, and I have the following apologies that have been given. Andrew Hall, JP, Mike Rowe, Dr. Steve Thomas, MLC, Simon Robbins, who I mentioned, Dr. Steve Thomas twice, he's not here either time, the Honorary Mia Davis, Dr. Brad Pettit, Deborah Zanella, Justine Collier, and John Berger. Do we have any other apologies to list? Nope. Thank you. I'll move then to item 3 of the agenda, the minutes of the annual general meeting from the 3rd of November 2022. Copies of the minutes have been presented to members and were available online prior to the AGM, and copies are available at the registration desk as well. I was not at that meeting, I was an apology, but I would like to call for a Shelter WA member to move and second that the minutes be accepted as a true and accurate record unless there are any discrepancies. Moved by Natalie Sangali and seconded by Michael Pugh. Twice. You got 2 cards. Great. Thank you. So all in favour of the minutes being moved, the minutes are moved from the AGM 3rd November 2022. Thank you. Item 4. Presentation of the audited financial statements for 22-23. The financial statements, again, there's a hard copy and an online copy available in your packs. The financial statements were audited by the Australian Audit Group and they have issued an unqualified audit opinion, confirming the financial statements give a true and fair view of the financial position of Shelter WA Incorporated as at June 30, 2023. This is the documents here, which have been both audited and signed by the Chair and the Treasurer. I would like to call for a Shelter member to move and second the audited financial statements of 2022-23 be accepted. Moved, Tina, thank you, and seconded by, thank you, Mark. All right, the presentation of the annual report. There is a QR code, I think. Oh, there it is. Fantastic. You can take a photo of that with your phone. If you need a younger person to help you with that, I can do that. The annual report is available online at the Shelter website. It's an accessible PDF document. You can use this QR code. I will take the written reports of the Chief Executive Officer and Chair taken as read. This allows me a couple of minutes just to sort of speak to some of the elements within your annual report, which again, I know that Kath has mentioned this, but you know, we have a sort of an outsized output for our footprint. Does that make sense? The team that pulls together these documents, these policies, these positions and this research really do an outstanding job. And I think it's important to reflect on a couple of, I guess, the highlights for the year. The first one is that this is Kath's first year as a CEO, and it feels like you've been here forever, Kath. Under Kath, the board has developed a new strategic plan. Kath has done an outstanding job to ensure that there's clear reporting and accountability to this plan. So thank you. I think that's been fantastic. And Kath's been able to settle an incredibly diverse and passionate and talented team into our new office upstairs, and a range of projects including sector strengthening support for the Aboriginal community housing organisations, supporting tenants with disabilities. I know Donna, thank you for that work. Ongoing regional engagement. We had staff doing almost as much flying as I do, which was fantastic. And ensuring policy programs are informed by best practice research and knowledge, and some of which you saw in the pre-budget submission presentation prior. I think the Make Renting Fair campaign has just been unbelievably important. It's provided a voice for, you know, almost 700,000 renters who live in Western Australia. And I think most importantly, I just want to recognise that the services commissioning was talked about. There's always graphs about the differential in percentages and, you know, 1% here and 3% there over 10 years. That's a kind of numerical indication, in a sense, of the stresses that have been placed on the sector just from a purely fiscal perspective. But the staff frontline, and not only frontline, but all staff that we see with our members have really been under unbelievable stress, being pushed to go really above and beyond what they're really funded to do on a daily basis. And this must be addressed. It just has to be addressed soon. This crisis that we find ourselves in as a nation in relationship to housing is going to be deep and long-lived. Some of the solutions that have been put forward in the pre-budget submission that are repeated again, some of them from last year, are systemic and structural, and it's a very big ask to reset the course of the housing system. But I just want to thank, in particular, the shelter team for their unwavering commitment to this in the face of, I think, what is a very large challenge. I'd also like to thank the Shelter Board for their commitment and advice throughout the year, and in particular pay respect and acknowledgement to Gordon Cole, who retired from the board this year. I'd like to thank him for both his contribution to the board, but also personally, a number of conversations that I've been lucky enough to have with Gordon on the sidelines over the years. And he provided considerable experience working with First Nations communities, helping Shelter as an organisation better understand unique housing needs in the sector. And I think you can see through our commitment in some of the projects that we do as a continuing focus of our work. So thank you all. The annual report has a lot of stuff in it, as they always do. So I would hope that you would read and review that and distribute it widely. So I would like to call for a Shelter WA member to move and second that the 2022-23 annual report be received. Moved Catherine and seconded Alf. Thank you. All in favour? Great. Okay, item 6, the appointment of the auditor for 2023-24. It's proposed that Shelter WA nominate the Australian Audit Group as auditors for the 22-23 financial year. The Australian Audit Group have done, I think, some great work with us over the past few years. So can I have a Shelter WA member please to move and second that Shelter WA appoint Australian Audit Group Proprietary Limited as auditor for the 23-24 financial year? Moved Alf and seconded Michael Pugh. Thank you. Okay, item 7. Is anyone drunk out of these glasses? Just double checking. It's good to check, you know, I don't know. I should have got a bottle maybe. Anyway, item 7. Outcome, board nominations. Outcome for the 2023-24 Shelter WA board. So pursuant to Rule 10, nomination and election of ordinary board members of the Constitution of Shelter WA, the Chief Executive Officer called for nominations from members for 3 vacant positions of ordinary board members on the Shelter WA board. A written notice was sent to members calling for nominations and prescribing the requirements for a valid nomination on the 21st of September 2023. And nominations closed at 5 p.m. on the 9th of October 2023. 3 valid nominations were received from members: Mark Slattery from Rua Community Services, Alf Lay, and Tina Ugle from Nyunga Maya Maya. Our returning officer, Tim Grace Smith, has overseen this process and hereby declares that these 3 members being elected to the Shelter, declares that these 3 members be elected to the Shelter WA board as ordinary members. They're not ordinary, but let's just call them that for the purposes of administrative function. So please join me in congratulating Mark, Alf and Tina. Thank you. And now I'm delighted to invite Emma Colombera up. Emma is the Executive Director, Office of Homelessness at the West Australian Department of Communities, and her team led the implementation of the 10-year strategy on homelessness, All Paths Lead to Home, providing strategic policy advice and working closely with the community services sector and key stakeholders. Over the past 15 years, Emma has held senior roles across West Australian departments of the Premier in Cabinet, Housing Authority and Communities, and she holds a Bachelor of Arts, Master of Business Administration and Master of Public Administration. Please welcome Emma.
Thanks, Kieran. I'm not sure if I would have agreed to get up here if I knew you were going to go into that much detail. Oh gosh, that was the whole bio. Thank you, and thank you for having me here today. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that we are meeting on Wajak Noongar Budja and pay my deepest respects to Elders past, present and emerging, and to Aboriginal people in this meeting, and acknowledge that those that we seek to serve are also we see Aboriginal people vastly overrepresented in the homelessness services system and in our data, and everything that we do is to rectify that. And that sort of brings me, I'm speaking a little bit off the cuff, I guess, but I did want to make sure I got some key dates right, which is why I have the laptop here. So the Office of Homelessness is a fairly new establishment, I guess. It's a fairly new team, and it was established a bit more formally when government elevated homelessness to a standalone ministerial portfolio, which was at the end of 2021. And that was a fantastic thing, to actually pull homelessness out from the broader community services umbrella and say this is a standalone portfolio, because that's how important it is that this has a dedicated and targeted focus, and a minister who wants an absolutely clear line of sight over everything that his department is doing, and we can only do that in partnership with you all and with the sector. So that's been great, and I'm sure many of you would have had some contact with the Minister for Homelessness and would know how driven he is to get well, certainly more social housing, but to really make a difference. And it is particularly challenging at the moment with the housing market as it is, and I think that that has been very well reflected in Shelter's PBS. There are challenges at the moment and in this post-COVID market that we haven't experienced before. It's fair to say that our private rental vacancy rates have never been this low, objectively never been this low, and particularly for many regional areas. And that is very relevant, particularly, I guess you might be wondering, well, what's the Office of Homelessness really care about that? But everything that we do is about a housing first approach. So Kieran mentioned the strategy, and that does guide what we do, and we are doing quite a bit of work internally just to make sure that all of our projects, and there are many of them, fit within and contribute to the delivery of the strategy. Some of the initiatives that we've implemented recently that show that commitment to housing first are the Durapini Maya program, which we're delivering in partnership with Housing Choices. So that's really about getting the houses and connecting them with services and making sure that they're for rough sleepers, or people that have been experiencing rough sleeping for at least 6 months. Now, we haven't had anything that directly does that connection in a long time on that scale, and our intention is to keep it going and scale it up. And that's been having tremendous results. And that's really a huge credit to Nat and her team for making that happen. But those tenancies are being sustained and supported, and it's just a great example of how we can do housing first, and we can do more of it. So I won't take up too much time today. I just wanted to really say that we're committed. I'm personally very committed to making sure the Office of Homelessness delivers on the principles in the strategy. And I also wanted to mention that we are doing a homelessness commissioning process. And I've done 2 commissioning webinars so far, which are recorded and they're online if anyone is interested or wants to have a look. But essentially, we are going to be extending contracts to enable us to get to the status of commissioning that we need to be to move to 5-year contracts. But the intention is to move to 5-year recurrent funding and contracts wherever we can, as quickly as we can. Part of the issue is the capacity within the department to undertake a lot of different commissioning processes in parallel. So we're trying to stagger those out to make sure that you all shelter members as well, you may have homelessness contracts as well as a range of other portfolios, so to enable you to participate in those processes as well. But the one thing I wanted to mention is that we're establishing a homelessness commissioning reference group. The EOI is open now, and it closes on the 13th of November. It will have up to 15 members, and we would like to see a really diverse range of experiences, views, and organisations represented there. So we'll be looking for peak bodies, ACOs, regions, each of the service groups that we've identified, local government, lived experience, and lived experience is going to be quite key to this group as well. And we've worked with Shelter on developing that representation, and I've got to confess, our initial thinking was, how are we going to have lived experience on a technical commissioning reference group? And Kath basically said, you don't have a choice. Yeah. So your peak body is representing you very, very well. So, yep, that's really it from me. I wish you all well for the rest of your AGM, and I would like to thank Kath and Kieran as well, just for being fantastic people to work with. We are working under tough conditions sometimes, and you're always accessible, or constructive, positive, and have great ideas. So thank you to Shelter, and good luck for the rest of your meeting.
Thanks, Emma. We too value the partnership. Sometimes what we're talking about and what can be delivered and is capable of being delivered are two quite different things, and we acknowledge that. But I think that we have seen over several years now a strong commitment to action from the department, and anything we can do to assist and lubricate that action, we are here to help. So, I think we are now up to, sorry, I lost my agenda, general business. Item 9, yes. So I'll just make a couple of comments in this before I open it to the floor. I just want to thank the Returning Officer Tim Gray-Smith for his work on the nomination and election process. I do want to congratulate the members of the board, returning members and newly minted members to the board, and existing members of the board for their commitment and ongoing service. I do remind everyone that Shelter members are able to ask questions and speak at the AGM as per the Constitution, and so therefore I ask if there are any other points of business from Shelter WA members here today. Come on, I've made notes about the financial statement and everything, hoping for something. No? No? Oh, great.
How long has the auditor been appointed for? How many years have they done it for? Sorry. How long has the auditor been working for Shelter?
Well, that is a good question that I may not be able to answer on the spot, but I think certainly in my role since 2019, they have been the auditors for Shelter WA. Okay. How far back beyond that point, I'm not sure. So I'm happy to take that question on notice and provide it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Yeah. I'll just hand to the treasurer at the time when I joined.
Yeah, the ex-treasurer. That's true. From my recollection, it wouldn't have been much before Kieran's indicated time on the board, so yep. Relatively short period of time.
Yep. Any other questions from the floor? or other general points of business? No? Well, thank you all for attending. Thank you for attending to those online. I just want to say again, one more time, thank you to the shelter staff and team, and thank you, Kath, for the incredible work that you do. We will close the AGM at 4:30, and I invite you to join us for a few drinks and refreshments at the side. Thank you again.